Welcome. So, having some thoughts that I thought I'd just share that stem from, if we go back to my animations, California Mirror. Guess I can't just pause it. So essentially, here's California, of course, and here is Sulawesi and North Maluku Islands, this region. I don't know what it's called by as a whole, if it has a specific name. And then here's Australian shelf that was adjacent, so we've talked about in other videos this region that like this bond was over down this way, so this stretch was down here. This went down to here with the Malachi Maluku Islands and Sulawesi, this region down here, a conjoined part of the plate, the crust, continental crust of the what was conjoined to Australia, just separated there. So it just separated out. But adjacent to this, because this was all over here, here's Papua New Guinea here, and then up to here is like the stretch from Papua New Guinea to the boundary of Maluku here, from here to here, and then from here to here is from here to here, or to here, pretty much. Here to here, to like right here. And then the Philippines were here. So right here, this is what piqued my interest is, so back to this. There's a lot of mirroring here across California and the islands, where there's Una Island and Sutter Butts as like nodes within the upper portion of the basin structure, like a basin relative to the continental shelf, the islands, the above sea level islands, a basin here. But that this one's below sea level, this one's not. But Sutter Butts, in fact. And then Banggai Islands over here versus San Francisco Bay, which is like a opposite, where this one's below sea level, this one's above. And then there's the shapes here. So it occurred to me that there's probably a current coming up this way, because it has to be going into here. Like, in order to get into this, it can't be coming this way because of the boundary here and over here. So it must have came this way. So just based on the terrain, like, it does seem like it did that as well. Like, the terrain matches, which is good. This is probably a little off. Like, I'm noticing this maybe is actually more related to like right there, like that point and that point, to a point where like this is more down here, and then there's just a channel outlet between the island, this seamount chain and islands. But essentially, there's for sure, I feel very confident there's a current going this way into this region and basically flowing between the continental crust and opening it and filling the space with a basically lower elevation of material that ended up being like an opening in it. Whereas over here, it's not like the same. It's still continental shelf here as much as it is here. Whereas over here, it's kind of not so much an island here. Okay, this is livable, I guess. Okay, current going this way though. And then there's another current that I believe is going this way. It's possible that this same current is separating up this way and dividing into two currents, one that goes up this way and another that goes here, and then like over beyond that boundary is like almost like a some kind of boundary zone between this general current, if it's going that way, and then the currents over here. So there's, for exactly what is happening is hard to tell because this is just the end result, so I'm trying to like piece it together. That there are currents flowing seems pretty overwhelmingly evident at this point, so it really is just a matter of what the currents were, which I'm probably going to stop this video and make another video that's more focused on that exactly, actually. But right now, I wanted to start by talking about this, where there's generally is a current coming down this way. I feel confident about that it is going down this way and coming in this way, but also going past, down through here, and just past a current that's generally coming this way, but a wide current in a way where it like interacts with it, produces a boundary for that current. Like that current can't really push past the boundary of the current flowing along the coastline very easily. So it kind of gets like funneled down to a region down here where it really has like the protection of the Rencha to cross through here. Basically forming the boundary of the Rencha in the process. Largely because it was pre-formed, but also forming the boundary. Like the material was there, but the boundary was not until the currents flowed between the boundary and basically carved a chunk that was then generally in the shape of the Rencha that had flows underneath it initially. Like it's just flowing, but beneath it. Maybe I should just, it really would be useful to talk about what I was gonna talk about. So maybe I'll just do that real quick instead of even starting a new one. Let's just real quickly bring up the topic so I can kind of point to, maybe I should even make this big. New, let's say 3, create, okay. Zoom in bits. Okay. So this was my thought. If here's a sphere that I can only draw as a circle, and here's a sphere, and then say right here an opening in a intermediary layer in the sphere occurs that allows for exchange from the surface of the sphere to the base internal, like lowest layer of the sphere, like as far in as it can go, maybe balloon out from there, pretty much like a balloon. So there's basically a location that then begins, and this is what I'm thinking. Let's maybe make this a little smaller to emit mantle in all directions. Underneath the crust. So what then would happen, I believe, is it would just flow, but mind you, it's underneath a sphere. That sphere has a axis of rotation where... Is this the correct way the Earth is right? Oh, God. Oh, my God, it's hilarious. I'm pretty sure it is. I just want to make sure so I don't draw it backwards, okay? From west to east. Okay, we're good. We're good. From west to east. Okay, we're good. Okay. So this is, say, one, like, initial, or one initial. And then let's say 2. I'll just lasso this. Copy, paste. Okay. Okay, pardon me. 2 initial T1. Let's say T1. Whatever. It doesn't matter. And then go ahead and just erase this. Maybe do the same again real quick before I go putting anything more on it. Okay, cuts. Come down here. I hope you guys know what I'm getting at this point. It must be evident. Okay, whatever. That's fine. T1. So let's go here. So what I'm thinking, because of the rotation, now we're just going to draw like a rotation, like addition. Because of the rotation, it basically causes a general drag like in this way. So let's say it goes a little further this way. Wait, am I? Yeah, let me redraw that. So it goes, let's say, this way further. This way further. So initially it just comes out in all directions. But then, like, as time passes and its motions continue, it goes this way, but it's actually starting to, like, curve. And then so is this one. And this one. So then at T1 we start to have this effect. So maybe I can just begin to like outline. Something like that. Where like there begins to be a divide in this current because there's basically only the current going exactly the way that it's along the equator doesn't like bend off pretty much. There's the specific path to not bend off. Everything else tends to bend off, but then what that ends up doing is producing basically this I guess I'll just real quick go like this, unlock that one, go like that, group. Okay. Those are probably a little too close. It's like an eyeball. But then this one, because it's got like, it's basically building a backstop. So if, good enough. This structure here kind of behaves like a backstop. Which then begins to focus this current to a point where it's like a focus current. So there's this large current of this large backstop thing and then a focus current. Okay, let me show you an example in Hawaii on the Big Island. Where basically it generally, this is my thoughts, is there's like a upwelling, and probably because it was occurring on a sphere, as a matter of fact, is like why it's rotating. Like, what do you mean it's rotating? Like, where's the orbit? Where's the orbit of this structure here? Like, this requires a rotation. Orbit? I'm sorry, the rotation. I know I use the wrong words a lot, and it's probably irritating to people. Like, well, okay, so let's keep going. So really, now what we find is it starts to get like deflected around the pole and then down this way, basically. So let's draw that. This is literally just that one arrow, like that, just branching off more and more while this flow like maintains a more steady like maximum distance out it can really do this kind of thing. Although I'm probably not drawing it quite well enough, but now we're gonna get to something really interesting where let's just draw it out like this. I'm not sure if I did that well. What I was essentially getting at is right here is this path. This one is essentially, so if we start at here, if we start at the puncture hole, here's the puncture hole going east, is this focused beam, and going west is this fanning, like, with channels type of thing that really had, like, actually a structure akin to this on the backstop side where the focus side was opposing it. So that flow went out that way. Let's follow it. Out this way. But then it runs into the resistance over here. It runs into the other current. So back the other way. Over this way. It's basically coming out in all directions, but then fanning around. Like to... like this distance, pretty much. Like a certain distance wide here, not like... it's not necessarily... as evenly distributed or as etc. as I show it, but I think it essentially becomes similar to this as it approaches North America, and that's pretty much kind of like the structure here with these like cross things going through them that go to these specific points I've talked about in the past, although it's hard to like refer to on the spot now that I'm looking at it. I'm like, where were they? Because I'm pretty sure that like these currents just cut across in that manner, like this, where they produce like divots in linear, elongated fashions, but then at the end they have these like structures that maybe are more visible on the surface of the Earth. I don't know, I was just thinking maybe. So in essence, I'm thinking that this current going out from the puncture hole in India goes eastward this way, runs into resistance and is caused to deflect upward, but then it goes around the pole that it creates basically, and then essentially diverts this way. I'm not sure if it goes that way. It mostly has a boundary here form. I'm trying to think what I've come to some nuanced conclusions about Greenland specifically at some point. I cannot remember though. Specifically to do with this side, that there's a current flowing in here. So for sure, the current coming from the puncture hole flows this way, hits the resistance of the current going the opposite direction, goes up this way, bends around this pole, and basically divides. So some of it goes this way across here. So that's why I think it was actually more like out here initially, flowing to like that boundary, but then this Greenland got formed later. Something of that nature was going on, where it's probably more this boundary, but it's also out this way at that point and not so much this way until later on. But essentially went this way across, and some of it also, so this current goes and basically crosses itself, cutting down this way, but it flows through this way over here and down this way. So it essentially does of something of this nature, where it flows over, hits resistance, and in essence, because of that resistance, gets deflected around it and then back along the boundary of it. So it flows along the boundary of that resistance, or at least a boundary, maybe not the boundary, there may be others. Like this maybe is another boundary over here that what we were seeing flowing down this way. Like another boundary here from generally over there. But then this current flows down here and crosses this, like, this chunk that's fanning out. And that leads to what we're talking about, what we were just talking about. So back to what we were just talking about. Hopefully that wasn't too long of a tangent and made sense of kind of what I'm thinking about in regard to this. So back to here. So there's that current coming down here. Down this way. But it appears like it's also out here. Like it for certain went through here. But I was thinking that current went this way. So it must be that this current is coming this way. And then this current is coming through here. Not sure how it goes through here. Into the Philippines. Which was basically connected here. So we can see it real clearly going into the Philippines. Not so clearly here. So I guess it very, like, quickly ballooned this out so that the current went this way. But then it also went, like, deflected off this way. So maybe it initially just, like, stayed here and ballooned out like this chunk and made the bond from here reestablished to adjacent polygon by instead flowing through like this way. Or wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Fuck. That doesn't make sense. This is looking a lot more like there's a current involved this whole way this way. Did I cut too much off? No, I don't think so. It must have went in and just hit resistance and went out this way. Like deflected off this way. But like in so doing, it like separated. Like, let's see, is that reasonable? Goes in, like blows apart the continent chunk, the chunk of pre-existing landmass, continental shelf, separates the segments of it, and physically causes a ballooning here, so that then the current like pushes this aside pretty much and starts to flow more this way, where it then flows without resistance here, which is why there's not evidence of it in the same manner, because when it was flowing underneath the Philippines, Philippines were here. When it was flowing underneath the Philippines, it was flowing underneath the Philippines. They didn't detach as easily and left behind this imprint, whereas that must have just ballooned out quickly so that the current then afterwards flowed this way. Like it just literally had no resistance to the currents because they were so immense at that location, maybe. Which would kind of make sense also for why it would not only have this, but also like this. Although this region's very odd. I guess it could have just immediately detached it then, like started to detach it. Like it was here. This had to move. It's so crazy. Like how did this here move from all the way over here and not have a clear-cut like line where they assemble together pretty much? That'd be crazy if there's just like bonds across like that kind of thing, just across like a distinct path. I don't think it's up that far. Maybe this is kind of bonding. Maybe. I don't know how it'd move like that though. Like, no. So, here, like this current, because it's cutting across a current, current's cutting this way, just like a wide sort of fanning current that's got like a main, like somewhere that has the most current is probably a counter to the main flow. It is like the main current. But with like smaller currents at distances outward. And then this current though, interacting with it, because it's flowing past it, is basically caused to do something of this nature. I don't know if like where I'm drawing it is appropriate, but where like it starts to vibrate and divide a gap between the current, like it's flowing, it gets hit by a side current and starts to vibrate. That produces a physical space in the current that then generally causes like, what I was thinking is separation of the materials here. So like, actually, I don't know if that matters right now. Anyway, let's just look over here. So we see this feature around there, generally speaking. Which also so there's a current coming this way. That's essentially, I believe, passes this current and goes like this. So there's also this effect going on where like this current, because it's a mound, it's a mound. Like it's a current of material getting pushed as a mound getting pushed, like, and so it builds up like dense systems, basically large systems, whereas over here this is a subtle current that's like flowing through and just vibrating. Mind you, this also has this element here under the Yucatan Peninsula. I bet. Let's try it. Let's try this real quick. I was kind of curious what would happen if I go like here. Let's take that. Here, new, sure. Let's make it big enough. Let's get this too. I don't want to change the size. Okay. I'm just gonna arbitrarily cut this around here, and then I want to see how this chunk fits. Okay. First of all, let's just turn it. Or maybe I'll move this over here for now. Okay, let's just turn this at a minus 30, minus 30. $15-ish. It almost definitely was like that. Okay, let's go ahead and cut this segment out. Pardon me for anyone who's like, what the fuck? Okay, let's turn that one at minus 45, minus 30, minus 30. Okay. Let me just put a boundary on this. What those? I'm not sure if that was like that then. That seems not to be like how it was. That would pretty much require Florida to be like right here, which is also to be down here. That would require Florida to be like down here. It almost has to just be up there. This does seem to fit pretty well, this one. I'm not sure if it's like that. It seems like it must have ballooned, kind of thing. Let's go ahead and let's just see. That's pretty big. So kind of curious if it like fits up there at all. It seems to fit there in general, like on this. This is unclear because I think a lot of this is accreted, actually, or considered to be new continental crust. Accreted terrains. Very much as might be accreted. Which means it may have been largely formed in the process so that the shapes we see don't necessarily have I'm just like, this is kind of odd. This one seems, just based on this curvature, like if anywhere, maybe it was up here. Although maybe there was an opening there, in truth. Let's look at this map. Like if this is an equator, let's say this is an equator, and so this wants to go generally over here, I guess. Like that would be an equator. Because it went from here along an equator pretty much, and then here along an equator. It's just expanded, so it's not along this way. So, a current coming down here that kind of fans out in this region, has like an outer boundary wider than the neck. Like it's the neck of to the head of the snake current, or whatever current, head of the current that has like a larger segment. So I was thinking though about this. This is what I was kind of thinking towards, was what is going on along this boundary with this in mind, where like starting from this picture we go down the coastline and there's a current coming generally down the coastline that looks like it splits off this way, but then there's this current that then pushes this segment open and flows down this way. So maybe I could add some more frames to this to just like move these over, like widen this chunk here and then have the current flow that way. Because it effectively does that, where then maybe it's even doing it out here, like it pushes it out that far and then it does it there. It's not really visible here, but maybe. How far out is that? It's not that far. It's pretty much in line with where it should be. Because this chunk is this here, right to here is this line. So it's right there is this structure. So this is probably where current was flowing underneath this region. It was flowing out into it. Out into it. Pushing it out further. And maybe turning it. Maybe physically as it pushed it and detached it from here, it rotated. So that the current went through it differently. like through here. It doesn't really make sense. It almost has to like come in and then go out. Like maybe even exactly that. Come in and then to like this boundary. Go around and then go out. That makes sense. There we go. That makes sense. Which is reminiscent of then in that case. Periodic table of currents. Hydrogen. Current comes in, current goes out. Current comes in, eddy, neutron. Current goes around, goes out. Current comes in, eddy, neutron, and then it can like create an opening to then basically cycle through the periodic table. Very much like what maybe is going on here. A current coming in, going around a polygonal boundary, producing a mound at an end. On some scale, it behaving like a nucleus with, or a neutron. Where like this region is like a proton because it has space for current to flow, but it still is composed of like a dense material that makes this space. Like it's not just like water, it's a rock that's like holding the space, that's making the space available for the current to flow in, which is the proton. And then the current is the electron or electrons. And so, yeah. Something of that nature, where then it turned and its bond, its energy flow in, caused it flow out, so that the connection between here then was tapping instead the current, like instead of filling here, the current began to fill this way. And it must have also came through this region and like broken the broken Australia away from the islands, these islands right here specifically, just like along this boundary. Not even these though, just this boundary right here. These ones are probably, maybe even not these, but let's say these right here. Probably not these though. These are probably somehow brought about by the overall process. And maybe this is like material that was still around and being shaped by the overall process, but like when the current was flowing in this way and out this way, what we're specifically looking at was yet to really move this whole chunk over here. So until then, it probably didn't begin to produce this like main arc shape of the Indonesian archipelago. And so these segments that are part of it here probably were not quite made. Even this is probably just overlaid on top of, like, yeah, we can kind of see here it didn't overlay, but up here it started to overlay on top of and deposit enough material to actually create islands there. But so the currents just came in and opened up spaces, protons, created neutrons, kind of thing, in a way that then produced like a imbalance in the system where it energetically bonded to an adjacent system. So it was so too for that one. Like all these partial land masses that are not like complete continent shapes are bonded, and even the continents are bonded through bonds. The only one detached completely being Antarctica, but even then, it's bonded, really. So that everything is bonded energetically across some form of bond. That then, when the Earth was expanding, reformed new bonds. So, like, currents flowed in here, met enough resistance that they just bounced out, basically, went around and out, creating an eddy here. So they probably specifically went in this way, met resistance, and just were generally caused to flow this way and around the eddy point, but like deflected to a degree to flow this way, but still around the eddy point, so like around it and then out this way, and then physically underneath the Philippines. So it started to really carve into the Philippines, but the Philippines broke away before this occurred to the same degree. And while that's occurring, a current then is flowing out here, up this way, and then under here. Enough where, like, it's a cross current. So we can probably reliably say that that part is right. This current, it's very hard to determine what direction current flows truly would be if this is the case. But under the interpretation that this is the case, we can probably say this current here is accurate, and then it moves this island and moves that way, and then sends this other current over here coming this way. Seemingly, it like diverts to maybe like a maximum distance outward over here, so that then it has like a secondary, like I guess a portion of this current coming down here that just kind of flows through here, but then it runs into that current, so some of it comes in here, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm looking in the right spot. There's San Francisco Bay. Some kind of flow, seemingly. Across here. Where did that come from? It might be a current here, like most of the current wrapped up, because that's what's happening. Is even this main eastward propagating current gets deflected. Everything's deflected, even the eastward propagating one, but maybe there is like a very fine threaded, like still propagating truly eastward through the current that's really more so right along this boundary, and then along here, and or even more so this boundary. Probably both of them, depending on before or after the process of expansion has like filled the earth with these kinds of currents to the point where they have nowhere to go except for up, and causing the earth to grow in radius and lifting the continents, kind of thing. So there's probably a current coming straight across here, though. That's also coming straight initially across here. That's both of these currents, depending on when exactly. Initially, it was this current up top, the higher current, because that was the appropriate angle to go exactly opposite to the bulk. So it was up here, and then it flowed like this, and then like this. So that's really related to what's going on up here. This here is related to a current cutting the main current that maybe even goes right through like Japan. Here's the very tip of Japan. Here's that current. Through Japan to the tip where it then vibrates out. Until it starts to expand, which is what's going on here, and then it flows out this way. But then it looks like maybe it flows in over here. Oh, maybe it flows right to Yellowstone. Like there's a current cutting across here. Right across here. Across here, across here. And just across here, like right here. A current that's flowing, that's building a mound. That's probably why it's like a long mound. Maybe that the current itself went out of phase here and separated and then remerged over here because it was going through resistance, I guess, some cross current there due to like this expansion. Essentially this region is this current begins to balloon out this way and flow generally over here. So maybe like that region gets especially cross current influence on it, but this here also, the current cutting across strips material from Hawaii as the sphere that it is rolls through here and interacts with the cross current. Then the current comes in here, it looks like, if it's there. Yeah, it comes in right below Yellowstone's magnetic field and like fuels it, maybe? Really flows in right through this region, which is where Una Una Island is. So Una Una Island is sitting here with this current flowing above and below it across this way, the straightaway current. That the like bulk of that current then flowed over here, but the most narrow current flowed over here and into Yellowstone, I guess, where it then goes this way, because that's what straight was at the time. Like, even though it's flowing this way through the ocean, like when it went this way, it then came out this way. From under Australian part. I'm not completely sure about what all the things I just said right then on these lines. Never really thought about that. It seems like there's a focused beam and a fanning out beam, and the focus beam gets more and more focused and has different degrees of focusedness, and the fanning out beam is really just like the lack thereof. the lack of focus beam that then is a backstop for the fanning out beam to project from, through, around, and to swirl through the earth and collide and produce shapes. Okay, but if there's a current coming here, let's just go to Google Maps, I guess. Like, it seems like there's a current coming in here. And here. Like, for it to do this, maybe it even needs a current to, like, carve into something. Whereas if the current was coming out of it, then it would produce, like, a outward mound. So for there to be, like, an inward structure, there needs to be maybe, like, a current at some point that was flowing. And since it's all related to Earth expansion process, like, it's probably there was a current flowing in here. Like, maybe this, like, it's not even necessarily, and even up through there and into here. Maybe that's how the ridges occur. Like, the fanning out one is just like a bulk fan, and then the ridges are from like different degrees of focus banning, because depending on how off balance from straightaway it is, and maybe it just continues at some point, like the narrow straightest one just keeps wrapping around and producing like these kinds of structures. Maybe, I don't know. Because I was just thinking, like, even though there's lines this way, I thought the curves, these were coming this way, so like all these kinds of features, maybe I was thinking it was more so coming from this flow, but maybe it is more from a focus beam side of it. Okay, so I was generally thinking maybe like the dense material that builds up underneath in the fanning aspect of the flows would be like maybe cold, like the stuff that cooled basically, that then kind of like squeezed the liquids out of them, which then were forced in the opposing direction to go as the focus beam current, as the masses got sent out in the other direction. So many possibilities. How am I ever gonna get anywhere except for realizing that this was all just a show, that love is the way? So, like, at the end of this here, where there seems to be a current coming down this way, and then fanning out here. I don't know what to think of the Gulf of Mexico. It seems like it was like I was drawing it. Like, not drawing it, doing it. Like, there was some aspect of this to it. Like, I think that's even how plate tectonics does it. It's generally just wedging it up like that. But maybe I... Maybe it's something more like that, where not that, but where up in this region maybe was some other materials. I don't know if that makes sense. It really makes more sense to me that this was physically conjoined to that along these boundaries. Which almost forces me to consider more. What am I doing like this? Like, maybe it formed more like that with... What do we got here? What do we got to fill this in with? A bunch of debris, pretty much, and then some couple larger chunks. Really, does that fit whatsoever? I mean, not the worst, honestly. Looks kind of like a swordfish or something. That kind of looks reminiscent of the shape enough to be like, maybe, let's see. I don't know if I have it the right size anymore. Maybe there. Let's try there. That looks right. Let's just do that. Just in case. Kind of cheating to grab that chunk there. Okay, it doesn't even fit. Okay. With that chunk, that is. I mean, it's not the worst fit. It could have been more like that. Because essentially we need a boundary more over... where this segment is able to go here. And then this... This, I believe. Wait. It's so hard to remember what I freaking did now. I was thinking this side went down here to about here. And then this went to here. Can I still do that with this map? I know it's kind of ridiculous, guys. I know. I don't think I can. I need this side for that. Okay, besides the point. I don't want to get distracted on that too much because I'm not sure what's going on there exactly. Back to this though. Let's see. It's just there's this gap, but then there's this segment, the Florida chunk here. This whole chunk, really, this whole chunk here is also kind of down here, but missing it. Maybe even there. Like there. So maybe Florida was there. Let me get rid of that. Let's do a different color for those. Just so I'm not crossing them too much there. Okay. Maybe this too. Oh, well, I guess I should have not done the same color as that one. Whatever. I give up now. That's enough. Okay, so this, though, would have been up there, which would have been seemingly up here. Like, if this was folded down, where, like, this chunk is just kind of here also, down here. Generally like there. With this up along it though. To there. Like that. And then Florida there. And then the Yucatan Peninsula, pretty much where that is. Over here, though. So my thought was maybe there's something going on with a dense, like a dense current here. Let's make it this colorish. Dense current flowing out this way. From here, generally speaking, like it kind of goes along the boundary and then back that way. And then a more subtle current that flows more this way. But then when it comes here, It's really coming through here, maybe? Into there. So that this pink spreading point is also actually up into here. At the time, but it just separated. Leaving behind the flow that way, but not over here. But then there's just a general flow down here. Cutting across. Like a flame. That then I was thinking maybe crosses again, so like I'd like to just draw over top the like thing after whatever it is. Let's just do that. I'll just draw over top of this. Okay. Coming in here, that way, but like doing this thing, the flame thing along there, so that then it basically comes in though here with what then amounts to like a flame current, but like again with a general mass divide of like a maybe like a yin yang kind of structure. I don't know, maybe like there. Because of this like different currents, one's hot fluid flowing, moving, not yet like solidified. The other is solidified and it's just getting moved in the currents more so, relatively speaking. Okay, let's keep going though. And then the current then flows over here. Where then it appears to do like up this way and through here as like opposites. Like the current continues to flow and to a point where it interacts with this other current that's coming down here, creates the East African Rift at some point. But like the mass builds this really nucleus structure, like a really dense surrounding structure here. So it kind of produces, just fills the region, puts a nucleus into Africa there. By the current flows, bringing both dense and subtle flows that are hot and cold and able to build mounds and able to move mounds. Okay, that's all I had for now. See y'all soon.